Welcome to Horrifically Charming, where we embrace the dark, live the horror, and dissect it all. I'm your host, Joe Thomas, and on this very first episode of Horrifically Charming, we will be discussing horror movies for beginners. So let's start. First off, for horror movies, there are a lot of subgenres in horror. So there's horror, and then there are all the subgenres that fall under horror. So you've got witchcraft, supernatural, paranormal, goth, folk, slasher, gore, splatter, zombie, vampire. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So I'm not going to take the time to go through all of these, but I am going to go through my top 10 with you guys of the subgenres. So I'm going to pick a movie that's beginner friendly for each one. And then I'm also going to start out here with giving you kind of a quick definition of what each of those subgenres is. So we're going to start with that. First one is going to be slasher. Slasher, think Michael, think Jason, think Freddy. So this is a intimidating person, man or woman, who is one track mind to hunt, stalk, and murder. That's it. That's a slasher. Then we come to supernatural, combines aspects of supernatural with horror. Then you go to found footage, which is by far one of my absolute least favorites. It's right up there with one of the other ones I'll list here. But found footage is where they use a technique of footage, cinematic, viewing that is found footage, meaning that it was lost or left behind by someone. It is found, and then we're watching it with the people who found it and kind of living the event through the camera lens. Again, I'm not a fan of found footage, but it is a very popular genre that has to be listed here. Then we go to psychological. So think mental, emotional, and psychological techniques and emotions used to unsettle and strike fear into the audience. Then you've got vampire. Kind of self-explanatory, guys. Bloodsuckers. Then you've got zombies, reanimated corpses. Most of the time they're cannibals, or cannibalistic. And then we go to my so slasher and gore splatter are my two tops. So gore splatter is our next one. This is where it goes over the top and excessively violent and bloody scenes. So think Terrifier, one of my favorite movies. But it is one of the ones that just makes you cover your eyes and go, what in the hell am I watching? But it brings me great joy. And then you've got my next found footage and comedic for me. I'm not a fan of comedic horror. It's just not something I enjoy. If I was going to watch something, it'd be something like Shaun of the Dead or Killer Clowns from Outer Space. But it's not something that comedy is not what I look for in horror. So it's not a favorite subgenre for me. Then we go to demonic possession. So this is where Satan or another demon takes possession of someone, usually against their will, making them do very bad things. And then you've got number 10, which is witchcraft. So elements of supernatural with magic combined to frighten you. So those are the top 10 there. Now we're going to go into, I'm going to give you what I consider a beginner friendly movie for each one of these. I do have my cheat sheet, so you're going to see me looking down a little bit for those of you that are watching on YouTube. So forgive me because this is my first episode and I am very nervous. So here we go. So first for me, we're going to go into slasher. So for slasher, for me, it's got to be trick or treat, not trick or treat. It's trick or treat. And this is your director is Michael Dougherty. For your cast, you have Quinn Lord, who plays Sam, the little guy. You've got Anna Paquin, Dylan Baker, Brian Cox, Leslie Bobb. I always say this young lady's name wrong. Rochelle Aytes, Aytes. So, I mean, this really does have a huge cast. I mean, it would take me forever to name all of them, but when you watch it, you're going to be like, hey, that's so-and-so. But this is filmed on Halloween night, and it is a combination of all of these different stories that's told, and they end up intertwining into one story. And it's just fun. It's got just enough horror to scare you and slasher to kind of, but it's not over the top. So I definitely think this is the beginner friendly for slashers. The next one is Supernatural, and this is where my favorite movie comes into play. And I apologize. Trick or Treat came out in 2007, guys. Just for reference, I know it's an older movie, but it is an oldie but a goodie. Not one that has to rely on a lot of electronics, or you're not watching it going, "Oh, this is so outdated." So it's still definitely a movie you can enjoy. Moving on, Supernatural, not this TV show, although we love the Winchesters here. With Supernatural, the subgenre, we're talking about my favorite movie, which is 13 Ghosts. So 13 Ghosts came out in 2001. Director is Stephen Beck. You've got Matthew Lillard, my heart will forever beat for, Shannon Elizabeth, who my other heart will forever beat for. And I have to look at his name. It's Tony Shalhoub. And I probably said that wrong, but he plays the dad. So this is a movie where a father, his two kids and their nanny, on financial hard times. I know that sounds odd when they have a nanny, but just go with it. Anyways, rich uncle dies, leaves them this house. They go to the house and blood and chaos ensue. I don't want to go too far into it because I don't want to ruin it. But I will tell you that the ghosts alone in this movie make it worth the watch. One of the reasons I can watch this movie over and over and over again is because of the ghosts that are in the movie. They're just wonderful characters. They're so well done. The makeup is incredible. The acting in this, especially from like Matthew Lillard, just amazing. So 13 Ghosts, my favorite movie. I even have my little tumbler here for those of you that can see it. Made by my friend Dawn. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So next we're going to go into found footage. Again, my absolute least favorite. I don't like found footage. Watching them tends to give me a headache. I don't know if it's motion sickness, but we'll go with the Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project is kind of the OG of found footage, came out in 1999. It's got two directors, Eduardo Sanchez and Daniel Myrick. Your cast is Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard. And this is 3 film students go out into a forest to film about the local legend, the Blair Witch. And like, I can't even explain this to you. It's just not my thing. But if you like found footage, or if it's something you want to explore, definitely Blair Witch is probably going to be the one you're going to want to start with. So the next subgenre we're going to go with is going to be psychological. So psychological, I think, tends to get a bad rap in horror, because people aren't sure which movies necessarily fall under it. Like think The Silence of the Lambs, things like that. For me, the best, hands down, but still beginner friendly psychological movie is going to be The Strangers. That is from 2008. You've got Brian Bertino as your director, and you've got Liv Tyler. She's always been a girl crush of mine, and Scott Speedman. So what makes this movie so terrifying to me is that this happened. Like, this is based on a true story. And I don't know why, but every time I watch it, even though I know what's going to happen, I still get scared every single time. It's just that good of a movie. And it is, again, that is in my top 5 movies of all time, not just in horror, but of all time for me. I just love it. It is, again, like 13 Ghosts, one I can just go back and watch over and over and over again. Next, we're going to go to vampires. So vampires for me, beginner friendly, is going to be The Lost Boys from 1987. You've got your director, Joel Schumacher. You've got Jason Patrick. You've got both of the Coreys, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, Diane Wiest. You've got Edward Herman and Jamie Gertz. So just a phenomenal cast in this, especially for back in 1987. But essentially, it's a single mom. Her 2 sons go to live with their grandpa in this town that is like the murder capital of the world, and vampires. So, and forgive me if I'm not going into too much detail in these movies, guys. It's because if you are watching this as someone who wants to just step into and dip your toe into horror, I don't want to ruin these movies for you, or if you're wanting to refer them to a friend. So I'm not going to go too far into the plots and things of that in this one for that reason. Next one we're going to go to is going to be Zombie. Now, Zombie for me, I have to go back to one of the OGs, which is going to be Night of the Living Dead, 1968, George Romero. This cast, you've got Russell Streiner, Patricia Tallman, Dwayne Jones, Judith O'Dea, Carl Hardman. Think the famous line from this movie is, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." and that is Russell Steiner's who plays Johnny, says that to his sister Barbara, played by Patricia Tallman. So wonderful movie. A group of people hide out in a house to hide from zombies. But the makeup work and things in this movie is what makes it incredible to me, and especially because it's not too over the top gore for a horror, and especially for zombies. So this is a very beginner friendly zombie movie, and I think it's just fun to watch some of these older ones and maybe start out with that one. So I would go with that one for your zombies. Next, we're going to, again, slasher and gore splatter tie with me. As much as I would love to be able to say for gore splatter, go with The Terrifier, that is not a beginner friendly movie. Don't watch that if this is your first adventure into horror. Gore splatter, I'm going to say The Evil Dead from 1981. You've got your director is Sam Raimi, and of course, the one and only Bruce Campbell, who I'm not even going to list anybody else in this movie because this movie would not be the movie it is without Bruce Campbell. He carries this movie and all the subsequent ones. It's just amazing. 5 friends go to a cabin and unknowingly release, demons. So it's just a fantastic, it's fun watch. It is a little gory, but it's almost comedic horror, but it's not so comedic that I can't watch it. So for gore splatter, your first adventure in, I would say definitely The Evil Dead. The next category we'll go to is going to be one that, again, I'm not a big fan of, and that's going to be comedic horror. Shaun of the Dead, I would have almost recommended, but I think there are some scenes that can be a little bloody in that, so I don't know. But for me, I'm thinking Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is from 1988. Your director is going to be Stephen Chiodo. Now, I have to look because I'm not sure of the cast on this. You've got Grant Kramer, Suzanne Snyder, John Allen Nelson, John Vernon, to name a few. And the plot with this one, guys, is really simple. Aliens from outer space, disguised as clowns, come down and terrorize a town. And chaos ensues. So if comedic horror is something you want to look into, that would be the one I would recommend for that. Or Shaun of the Dead. Then we're going to go into demonic possession. So this was a difficult one for me to come up with a beginner friendly one because there are not a whole lot of beginner friendly demonic possession, in my opinion. So I just went back to, again, one of the kind of OGs, and we're going to go with The Exorcist. The Exorcist came out in 1973. You've got William Friedkin, as your director. Now, for me, this whole movie is Linda Blair, who obviously plays, the possessed child. But you've also got Ellen Bernstein and you've got Jason Miller, who this movie I don't feel like would be the movie it is without them. And again, most people know The Exorcist, but for those of you that don't, I'm not going to give away too much. But Linda Blair is a child who gets possessed, and mom and some priests do their best to save her. So we're not going to go much further than that, but it is definitely one of those first movies that I went, what is happening, and covered my face. So just be ready for that. And then last but not least, we're going to hit witchcraft. For me, beginner-friendly witchcraft has got to be The Craft from 1996. You've got Andrew Fleming as your director, and then you've got Robin Tunney, who plays in that. I always say her name wrong. Fairuza Balk, who we love. Neve Campbell, Rachel True, Skeet Ulrich, and Christine Taylor. It's kind of funny because Neve Campbell and Skeet both end up playing in Scream as well. But they do an amazing job in this movie. The Craft is about 4 girls. A new girl in town comes in, 3 girls who are from the school and kind of bullied and picked on. They all form a coven, and magical chaos ensues. It's not over the top horror. There's nothing overly bloody. It's more of one of those psychological, like, ooh, this could happen, or the fear of having someone have that kind of control over you kind of thing. So I definitely feel like it's a good jumping off point for witchcraft. So there we've got my top 10. I'm sure people are going to have different opinions on what they would recommend. If you do have a different recommendation for a beginner friendly one in all of the genres we listed here, the subgenres, please leave a comment here and let us know. Let's recap. So we've got all the many different genres here. We've got slasher, supernatural, found footage, psychological, vampire, zombie, gore, splatter, comedic, demonic possession, and witchcraft. And we've got our recommendations for each one. So, and a kind of a brief breakdown, but not too much information that if you haven't watched it, you're not going to be able to enjoy it. And I really hope that some people that listen to this who have maybe stayed away from horror kind of allow themselves to venture into it carefully. So I just want to say thank you all for tuning into the inaugural episode of Horrifically Charming. Your support makes all this possible, so be sure to like, follow, subscribe, do all those things here and on my other social media. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out how to link all that. I will be releasing a new episode every Thursday. On next week's episode, we will be discussing sex and horror. So don't miss out. Until then, thanks again. May every day be filled with horror and sprinkled with charm. See you next week, guys.